Well, we usually talk exclusively high school football on the recruiting roundup, but this week we're switching things up because there was so much former high school football talent from Arizona on display this weekend because college football has officially begun as well. Welcome into the recruiting roundup brought to you by Ortho Arizona. I'm Claudia Collins alongside Cody Cameron. And yeah, we're talking college football today just to change things up a bit because eventually these guys, that's where they end up. We talk about them for a couple years and then we just got to keep it going when they get to college. So let's start with the U of A New Mexico game, a game that we were really excited to see a lot of Arizona high school talent in. Cody, what stood out in that game?
Now, I was talking to Jordan Ham, last week, Claudia, and we were saying, man, there's like double-digit Arizona high school football alums in this football game. Starting off with New Mexico, who's got Eli Sanders, running back from Chandler, Javen Jacobs, a star receiver from Saguaro, and sticking with that Saguaro alum pipeline. Their quarterback Devin Dampier, he absolutely lit it up in this football game. I know we talk about him a lot on this platform, but rightfully so because he's a heck of a talent. 390 total yards and 5 total touchdowns for the dual threat quarterback. He was electrifying. And heading to U of A, I mean, you look at their secondary for the Wildcats, there's so much representation from Arizona high school football. Starting with Traden Stukes, who's a safety defensive back from Millennium. He was one of the leaders of tackles, in this football game with 9 total tackles. Gunnar Maldonado, a Chandler alum, one of the best football players at Chandler High School. He had 4 tackles, and then the Hamilton pipeline down to Tucson. It is there and it's real and tons of talent. Tay Brown getting a start there. He had 6 tackles in that game. And then Genesis Smith, another defensive back alum from Hamilton, 4 total tackles and a diving, outstretched interception that, just was a huge pivotal moment in that football game. So the alums are out and the alums are shining down in Tucson.
Before filming this, I was saying I don't think I've gone a week in the last probably month without talking about Devin Dampier just because he's so talented and we saw this coming. But let's move a little north up to Tempe, Arizona. ASU crushed Wyoming in their season opener. A couple guys that stood out there.
Yeah, they just have such a powerful running game this year. It's a deep running back room. That makes it just more impressive with DeCarlos Brooks, one of the top running backs in his recruiting class back in the day, played for Chandler, the Chandler alum. And, he comes into this game, 6 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown where he just one cut north to south. It was like, watching DeCarlos in that stadium like 4 or 5 years ago in a state championship game where it's just like, he came into camp in his best shape, extremely explosive into the fall camp, and it showed on game one under the lights. That place was rocking, and DeCarlos, man, he balled out, averaging over 7.5 yards per carry in that big win over Wyoming.
All right, moving on to one last game, and with a college team that I've also talked a lot about in the last few weeks of Recruiting Roundup or Bleacher Talk, and that's USC because they do such a fantastic job recruiting here in the state of Arizona. And one of those guys, I mean, if we talk about Red Mountain, I think even years from now, we're still going to be talking about the legacy that Jacoby Lane left behind. Because if you think about Jacoby Lane, if you've watched Bleacher Talk or Roundup or whatever it is, few years that we were capturing footage of him, I think he had our catch of the year 2 years in a row. And he's just keeping that rolling up at USC. He had an awesome game. He was one of the most impactful players of the game, alongside Deuce Robinson as well, coming from Pinnacle, and Jacoby Covington. Did you get to catch that game at all as well?
Oh, it was such a fun game. And just watching those guys are such extreme talents. And USC does a great job kind of moving around the formation and stuff like that. And, they were young last year playing as true freshmen, but you just mentioned Jacoby Lane, 3 catches, 50 yards, and the go ahead touchdown, a game winning touchdown in that huge win over LSU. Deuce Robinson, same, had a huge catch in the slot. He's running outside release fade against that nickel defensive back and over the shoulder catch. And that's what those two do. They're so athletic. They're mismatched disasters because of their height and their athleticism. And then Jacoby Covington, the Saguaro alum, getting a start at corner. So long, very physical, coming up and run support, 4 solo tackles in the game. I love watching USC because they have such a big representation of Arizona high school football alums, and those guys showed out in a huge statement win for the Trojans in week 1.
Opening weekend for college football had no shortage of Arizona high school football talent. I think it is a true testament to the talent that's here in the state 48. So, Cody, thank you so much for all the knowledge you bring to the recruiting roundup. If you want more recruiting news, head to sports360az.com.